Hello and welcome back to the channel. I hope you've all had a fantastic Monday, and now that we've had a bit of time to let the weekend, the results of the football play out with the game yesterday with Chelsea and Man City, I hope that your first week of football was fantastic. So I want to go a little bit more in detail today about the Liverpool game. I've watched more videos today. I've checked out the highlights again today to see if there was things I missed, and there was a few things that I noticed which I thought was really, really good about the way Liverpool played, particularly in the second half when we came out and we started playing a lot better. So what I've done, rather than use the trusty Football Manager screen, I've got a tactics board now where we can actually highlight more player positions where people played and what I think the Liverpool shape kind of told us about the game and how we're going to play going further forward. The first thing I wanted to point out was what I noticed originally when I done my lineup and my prediction. I had Liverpool playing slightly different. So I had Szoboszlai more as this kind of attacking midfielder with McAllister and Gravenberch making this almost double pivot. But what I expected to happen during the game was that McAllister would push further forward to create this kind of shape, with Gravenberch kind of sitting and Alexander-Arnold coming more into this kind of position to create this whole double box, which I think was something that we will probably see in future, maybe against teams where we're not expecting to be as dominant in the game. I think against Ipswich, we kind of assumed that we would have the majority of the possession, majority of the ball. So we kind of went with a more kind of attacking kind of shape, if that makes sense. But for this game, we actually sat more, or at least we started more like this. And this is kind of highlighted in another thing I found. So this is a pass map that we have from the actual game, but I've also looked at the average position of players, and it actually is kind of similar to this. So a few things that this points out. Obviously, we knew that Trent and Robertson would come in a bit deeper. A bit narrower. But Trent more so coming inside, with Robertson kind of holding the width a little bit more. And also, the one thing that I found really interesting, especially with this map, is as you can see from all the lines from the passes, it's creating a lot of triangles throughout the pitch. And this is done by basically having no players standing next to each other or in a line. Instead, going back to this idea of staggered lines where you always have one player slightly in front of the other or slightly behind the other. So there's always a way of progressing the ball up the pitch using almost zigzag kind of pattern. I know we still utilise the long ball over the top. So for Van Dijk, for example, when he played his long ball over to Salah, we still utilise those. But we created a lot of this passing movement by creating these triangles, which enabled us to progress the ball further up the pitch. Trent coming more inside as well. What we noticed with these is it's designed to create certain overloads over particular sides of the pitch. So here we can see a 3-player overload. Here, if Trent pushed a bit further forward with Szoboszlai, if we was in attack, there's your overload over here. Gravenberch kind of holding in the middle. And also with, McAllister, Gravenberch dropping back, we created overloads in defence where we kind of ushered the players out wide, where I think it was a bit more comfortable with that rather than attacking us through the centre. So looking at how this works out on the actual pitch, these overloads are designed. So when Jota did come over here, McAllister came over here, Diaz, if we look on this, he was a bit narrower along with Salah than what I expected. So if we compare that, for example, to how Ipswich played, they held their width a lot more than what Liverpool were. Instead, we were coming in quite narrow, maybe making the pitch shorter, with Slot's training styles, he uses shorter pitches and controlling inside tighter areas. But when you look at us, for example, we did bring pretty much tried to play the game a lot inside this area with an average position. There were runs where players were pushing wide, when players were overlapping, underlapping, so on and so forth. But as an average kind of position, this highlights the fact that we was willing to sort of restrict the space into the middle, look for these triangles, these staggered lines, and create these passing opportunities where we could ping the ball in and out of players, with Gravenberch being that sort of the central hub for all of this. So what this does, when you start bringing players in like this, if we just put a few Ipswich defenders on, it brings those into the pit, into these kind of areas as well. So for example, if you've got the centre backs, you've got these kind of average positions with him pushing a bit further forward and him here. It's creating these kind of spaces where we have these gaps that can be exploited. So if McAllister was to make that run through the middle, or Szoboszlai was to make that run through the middle, or even, we saw with Connor Bradley pushing forward and exploiting these gaps, I do believe that's why we are creating these kind of overloads in these areas. But what it also means is if Diaz does come over here, dragging his defender, it gives space then for Robertson to make this run over here. Where he can then get through unmarked and then look to cut the ball back across the line, across the box for a tap-in. And I think this tactic's very, very good in terms of being able to not only utilize the space that we have on the pitch, but also to create space in certain areas to create these opportunities. We still saw the centre-backs, they were still splitting, to receive certain passes from the goalkeeper, for example, or, we saw at times Gravenberch would sort of drop back into this region where he'd get the ball and he'd look to knock it off. But yeah, overall, I think that, the way that we played was designed to create these opportunities, create these spaces. And in the second half, the way that we sort of turned it up, we noticed it a lot more, and we was a lot more precise in our passing. We was a lot quicker in our passing. We looked to progress the ball a lot better. I think that the change of Kwanzaa for Konate allowed us to do that a bit more. Whether it was a confidence, knowing that, I think, looking at one of the stats of the game was that Kwanzaa only won 50% of his duels during the game, whereas Kwanzaa was winning about 75%. So having that kind of more of a physical presence as a centre-back allowed other players to then start progressing the ball further, or allowed them to be a bit further forward with that confidence that Konate would be winning the ball, so they could then stay a little bit higher. I'm thinking namely of Trent, Robertson, and even Gravenberch as well. If you've got the confidence that he's going to win the ball here, then he can start to operate in these areas and then not only look to win that first ball from the duel, but also then look to pick up the second ball and the third ball and then, turn and progress it, which is where I want to then, sort of pivot onto the role of Gravenberch, no pun intended. What he done very well, which I don't think I really went into a great bit of depth, is, yes, he done the number 6 role well, but the way that we kind of utilised him wasn't as your Endo-style destroyer number 6. Instead, what he was doing was, if you look at some of the highlights purely from a Gravenberch perspective, he was getting the ball in these areas and he wasn't afraid to turn on it and then progress the ball forward, which for a number 6, if you think, we're starting to push these players up, it's A, it's a very brave tactic, but B, we are trusting our two centre-backs a lot when we start, when Gravenberch is turning and he's progressing that ball forward, he's running forward with the way that he does, and then looking to lay the ball off into these, 10 and 8, McAllister, Szoboszlai. As we look here, you can sort of see he's driving forward, he's looking for Szoboszlai, he's looking for McAllister, and then he's even got the lines where he's progressing the ball forward to Salah and to Diaz. So that really was his role in the second half, and he done it really, really well. Obviously, there's always going to be questions asked about whether he could do that, for example, against the Man City. When he's got the ball here, we know Man City like to have a lot of possession. We know that they like to commit a lot of men forward. We know that they like to, almost pin you inside their box. But I also noticed at times Liverpool were doing the exact same things. So there was one highlight I noticed. I think it was just before Jota's header, which just went wide. So Ipswich kind of had their players back here. But Liverpool, they weren't just looking to commit, say, Jota, Salah and Diaz. Instead, they had Jota in there, Diaz was in there, Salah was in there, Szoboszlai was in there, McAllister, he was in there as well. He had the shot that was blocked on the line. We were committing like 5-6 players at these points and really sort of pinning Ipswich into their box and causing them a lot of panic when, we weren't talking that, we had a shot, it was saved or it was deflected or it was blocked, and then it was attack over. There was one occasion where we had a shot, the keeper saved it, it came out, we had another shot, it was then blocked, and then I think it led to a third shot. The ball then came out, it was recycled. Trent then whipped the ball in, and then Jota had the header that just went wide. We are really putting a lot of players into the box, really pinning them back, and I think that goes back to one of the things that that Slot was saying in terms of how he's going to get the best out of Darwin Núñez, and that's by creating as many goal scoring opportunities or putting the ball into a goal scoring opportunity for Darwin. Obviously, in this game, it was Jota. That's exactly what we were doing. We were getting the ball, we were trying to keep it in and around their box, really pinning them in at times, and I thought that was a really good style. I think the first time I saw it work really, really well was I believe it was Spain against Georgia in the Euros. One thing that they'd done really, really well was when Spain were in attacking positions, they weren't afraid to put as many players forward as they could whilst still staying defensively sound, to really pin them back. And that's how you do defend it, or how you do play against a team that operates with a low block. So it would be interesting if we are going to do the same, sort of tactical style against the likes of Man City or Arsenal, or, if we will sort of see more of how we played in the friendlies, where we was looking for counter-attacking opportunities, where we was inviting them to press us instead, and then looking to spring an attack from there when, a lot of their players were out of shape because they'd been pressing. So there's a few things that I thought was really interesting. One other thing I thought was really good that I haven't really seen it touched on so much. I have seen people comment on it, but it was from the corner where I believe McAllister was about here. He came into a tackle from one of their players. He lost the ball. They then played the ball forward to the player who was running along here, and their striker then made this run. And then what we saw, because obviously you had Van Dijk up there, you had Kwanzaa up there, and Trent came all the way across the side of the pitch here to sort of block him. And I think what Trent was doing, because he didn't actually go straight in and try and win the ball back off the player. Instead, he was limiting his options. And I think he was trying to allow him to come inside. He didn't want him to commit him on the outside. But the role that I actually thought was really good was Szoboszlai. So we saw Szoboszlai run all the way back. And then there's one moment where you see him look across the side of our goal to see their striker. So what Szoboszlai then did was then just took himself in front of where the striker was here, and then just completely cut off that passing option, which meant that the player, he had to come inside. But by this point, then we had started to get our other players back into defensive positions. So he cut inside one, he cut inside two, and then the shot was quite comfortable for Alisson to save. So I just wanted to comment on that because I thought it was really good defensively. It kind of reminded me of the time when I believe he was playing against Tottenham, and Van Dijk was in a 1v2 situation against the two Tottenham players, and basically he allowed the player with the ball to shoot on his weaker foot by blocking off the pass on the one side and also blocking the player from coming inside onto him as well. And it reminded me of that, so it was very good defensively from those two. So it was really well done. And then it kind of made me think, yesterday when I was talking in my video, I highlighted, for example, the likes of Gravenberch, who I think played really well. But also the role that Szoboszlai had in the game yesterday as well. I thought he played very, very well. Kind of went under the radar a little bit of a lot of people. Obviously, Salah scoring the goal. I think in the video I said it was his eighth, but I think it was his 9th opening goal of the season. Jota with his goal, he should have had 2. I thought Diaz played well as well. He was unlucky where he tried to lift the ball over the goalkeeper, but ended up lifting it over the bar as well. I think Robertson, he could have played better. I think he'll admit that himself, but I think, he did miss a lot of pre-season. He only came back in for the game against Las Palmas, I believe. So I think this was more about getting minutes into his legs and getting him back up to speed than thinking that he was at a level, he was more ready to play than Tsimikas. So I think that's what that was designed to do. Then also the likes of bringing Bradley on, who I thought Bradley played really well when he came on. Unlucky not to score a goal. Was really direct with his running, looking to exploit kind of these spaces over here. Cutting in on the underlap, which I thought worked really well in pre-season with his running. He did kind of go underlap, overlap, underlap, overlap. It wasn't a set one every single time. And he seems to be a player that will really sort of abuse those spaces. I don't know if Trent would really be looking to abuse those spaces more. In terms of, when Trent's got the ball, we saw the one time, I think it was that same occasion with Jota's header. He got the ball here, looked like he was going to pass backwards to commit their player to sort of coming into this area. then turning, bringing it up, and then looking to whip that ball into the box rather than attacking, a space that's been created for him. But overall, I thought, especially second half, the kind of positions the players were looking for, the link-up player that they was looking for, the way that we weren't afraid to commit players forward. When you think opening game of the season, Slot's first game in charge, Ipswich, newly promoted to the Premier League, so they're going to be buoyed up playing at their ground. This was a potential banana skin for us. I think, everyone kind of recognises that yes, we expected to win, but, with the amount of sort of pressure that must have been on them, especially, Slot's first game, and a chance for everyone to take a full look at the system and how we're going to play in a Premier League setting. And, the way that we was caught on the counter a number of times, thinking back specifically to that corner kick, realistically, it was only Trent that was back, and he was the one who came across to sort of, confront the guy running with the ball, and it was Szoboszlai then that tracked back to block that pass to the striker. It didn't make us think, okay, well, we need to stop doing this, we need to stop committing players. Instead, there were occasions where we would see 5-6 players in and around their box, and Gravenberch was kind of sitting in this kind of role here. So, it wasn't like we was very, very... We had some players deep expecting the counter-attack. It was, no, we'll commit players forward, we'll create the goal-scoring opportunities, we'll put the ball into an area where we want our attacking players to be able to get onto it. And I thought that we'd done very, very well. I thought McAllister, he didn't have his best game, but again, he missed the pre-season. I think he only played against Sevilla. We had the extended break because of the Copa America. So his first game, really, he didn't look... He wasn't poor by any stretch of the imagination, but, we're used to kind of McAllister controlling the game and running the game from that midfield position. So whether it's a new tactical thing that he's still getting used to, or, whether it's just a bit of an off day for him, we can forgive that. Szoboszlai, again, thought he played really well. I thought Trent played well. I thought the, covering for that corner with the counter-attack, I haven't really heard that much mentioned about it. So I thought from that point of view, defended it really, really well. So overall, it was a very, good game from our perspective, especially the 45 minutes. But the one thing I do love, whenever I hear a Slot interview or, pre or post game interview or whatever, he's not afraid to comment on the fact that, we did play well or we did some things that he did like. But he's always saying there's more things to work on. There's a lot of things I don't like. He was critical of the first half. I think one of the comments he made was when someone said about how did he find his opening game or his first Premier League game. He said it depends which half you're talking about. He's not afraid to say that he didn't think we played well or we played bad. Substituting Kwanzaa at half time, which one of the things, if I have any criticism of Klopp, and I don't. I loved Klopp. I thought Klopp was one of the best managers we've ever had, and it was obviously heartbreaking to hear him leaving. But sometimes we knew that players weren't having a good game, and whether it's because Klopp had kind of built up trust with the players or whether he kind of knew how things were going, sometimes substitutions were a little bit late. But, under Slot, we kind of see him saying, nope, you're not playing very well. Something's not working. I'm going to make the changes now. And not being afraid to make some other substitutions as well. Alexander-Arnold coming off for Conor Bradley. I think everybody is kind of wondering, can we get Bradley and Trent into the same team? People thinking maybe, pushing Trent into that number 6 role. But I think, when we can use these two players, but in different ways, obviously Trent more creative with the ball at his feet, looking to, what pass can I play to like spark something into life? Whereas Bradley, he's more of that runner, is more direct. If anything, he's more similar to Robertson with that direct running and looking to attack spaces and, get himself into the box. It provides different options the whole time. I thought Diaz had a good game. I thought he probably should have done better where he lofted the ball onto the roof of the net. Probably should have scored that. But, one thing I do like about Diaz, he does seem to get a lot of criticism at the moment, rightly or wrongly. I don't think I agree with all of it. But the one thing I do like about him, he's a very direct runner. He's not afraid to get the ball, face somebody up, try and beat them, and get into the box. And that's one thing I like about him. So I was intrigued to see how he was going to play in this system whereby, we are bringing more players sort of together in like these kind of regions and getting McAllister involved and Robertson. Is he going to be a good player? Looking to get the ball late off, retaining possession. I think one of the phrases that Slot used was, kill them with passing. I've not really thought of Diaz as being this technical passing type of winger. I thought that role was more suited to Gakpo. So it'll be interesting to see how he develops in that role over time, or whether Slot changes his style slightly to accommodate different players. Personally, I do think that over time we'll see Gakpo coming more into that role, because I think Gakpo suits that kind of style, especially when looking at this one here, where you're talking, we want you in the width of the box, and not only just trying to beat your players and create goal scoring opportunities. Whereas I see Diaz as more of like your traditional kind of winger, where he's looking to exploit these areas and then cut inside into the box from there. So it'd be interesting to see how that develops over time with Diaz. But I thought he had a good game on the whole. But yeah, so that's a bit more of a breakdown of what the things that I noticed that I thought was really good. So let me know in the comments if you agree with what I've said. Let me know let me know who you thought was man of the match. Let me know, what do you expect from the season going forward in terms of players? Do you see Diaz, for example, being the starting left wing, or do you see Gakpo coming in more? But yeah, so drop a like if you enjoyed the video. It's really appreciated. I know I've got a few likes on my videos recently, so that's really appreciated for all of them. Subscribe if you enjoy the channel and you want to be notified when I next upload. And thank you very much for watching, and I hope you all have a fantastic rest of your day. Take care.